It started as an ordinary day, but what happened next would shock everyone. A police officer, sworn to protect and serve, crossed a line that should never be crossed. At the center of it all was a young black woman, smart, confident, and determined to carve her own path. She also happened to be the daughter of a respected judge. But in a heated confrontation, fueled by prejudice, this officer's actions went beyond words. A slap, a moment that would change everything. What he didn't expect, though, was what came next. His colleagues, witnesses to the incident, were faced with a choice: stay silent or take a stand against their own. And in just 5 minutes, everything flipped. Loyalties were tested, alliances shifted, and the truth began to unravel. How did this moment ignite a chain of events that left even the officers speechless? And what does it reveal about the power of accountability and justice? Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. The young woman Mia had always been taught to stand tall in the face of adversity. As the daughter of Judge Caroline Daniels, she knew the weight of justice and the responsibility that came with it. That day, she was on her way home from a late study session when the confrontation unfolded. The officer, a man with a reputation for being harsh and quick-tempered, stopped her for what seemed like a routine traffic issue. But his tone quickly escalated, laced with condescension and assumptions he had no right to make. Mia tried to remain calm, explaining herself respectfully, but the officer's attitude only grew more aggressive. Witnesses nearby couldn't believe what they were seeing, their phones discreetly recording as the situation spiraled. And then came the moment that would haunt him. A slap meant to assert dominance, but one that only revealed his weakness. What the officer didn't realize was that Mia's identity wasn't a secret for long. His colleagues, watching from the sidelines, exchanged uneasy glances. They knew this wasn't going to end the way he thought. Mia's heart raced as she sat in her car, her cheeks stinging from the slap. The world seemed to freeze for a moment, but her mind was already calculating her next move. This wasn't just about her. It was about standing up to injustice. Nearby, onlookers whispered among themselves, their shock quickly turning to anger. One man hesitated, then stepped forward, his phone held high, making sure every second was captured. Inside the station, the officer's colleagues were already hearing whispers about the incident. They'd worked with him long enough to know his temper could be a problem. But this was different. One officer, Rebecca, felt her stomach twist as she watched the video being shared among the staff. How could he cross such a line? She muttered under her breath, knowing that staying silent would make her complicit. Meanwhile, Judge Daniels received a cryptic text. *, your daughter needs you. Now, *, as her driver sped toward the scene, the tension only deepened. The fallout was coming, and no one would escape untouched. As the night deepened, the situation outside grew more tense. Mia stepped out of her car, her voice steady but firm, as she asked the officer why he felt the need to treat her that way. The crowd around them grew larger, their murmurs growing louder. People weren't just bystanders anymore, they were witnesses, and they wanted answers. The officer, now visibly uncomfortable, barked orders for everyone to disperse, but no one moved. Inside the precinct, Rebecca was pacing. She couldn't shake the image of Mia's face in the video, the slap echoing in her mind. She had spent her career fighting for what was right, and now she was faced with a decision that could cost her everything. Turning to her colleagues, she said, "We can't let this slide. It's not who we are, and it's not what we stand for." Some nodded in agreement, but others looked away, unsure of the consequences of speaking up. Meanwhile, Judge Daniels arrived, stepping out of the car with an air of authority that silenced the growing crowd. Her piercing gaze fell on the officer, who suddenly seemed smaller. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Everyone knew something was about to break, but no one could predict how it would all unfold. As Judge Daniels stood there, her presence commanding the attention of everyone around, the officer's demeanor shifted. He tried to backpedal, stammering out excuses about protocol and misunderstandings. But the crowd wasn't buying it, and neither was Mia. Before anyone could speak further, Rebecca emerged from the station, her face pale but determined. She carried with her a file, a complaint against the same officer from months ago, buried and forgotten. This wasn't the first time his actions had crossed a line, and now the weight of his past was catching up to him. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed both the officer and the growing crowd. "We have a responsibility to uphold justice, even when it means holding our own accountable," she said, her words cutting through the tension. The officer's face turned red as he realized his colleagues weren't standing with him. They were turning against him. But then a new twist. A man from the crowd stepped forward, his phone still recording. "You think this is bad? I've got footage of him harassing someone else last week," he said, his voice laced with anger. He held up the screen, showing yet another incident, this time involving an elderly man. The crowd gasped, and the officer's colleagues exchanged uneasy glances. Now it wasn't just about Mia. It was about uncovering a pattern, exposing a system that allowed this behavior to go unchecked. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path forward was fraught with tension. The question on everyone's mind was no longer if justice would be served. It was how far this would go and who else would be implicated. As the video played on the man's phone, the murmurs in the crowd grew louder. The officer's face went pale, and he took a step back, but there was nowhere to hide. Rebecca, holding the buried complaint file, turned to the judge. "This isn't just about tonight. There's a pattern here. We failed to act before, but we can't look away anymore." Judge Daniels nodded, her gaze unwavering. She turned to the officer and said, "You thought you could intimidate my daughter, but your actions speak louder than your words. Justice will be served, and it starts now." The officer stammered, trying to justify his actions, but it was clear the tide had turned. His colleagues, once hesitant, stepped forward, agreeing to testify about his misconduct and ensure accountability. But just as the officer was being escorted away, another twist unraveled. A young rookie officer hesitated before speaking up. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling. "I overheard him bragging about how some complaints were covered up with help from higher-ups." The crowd froze. This wasn't just about one bad cop, it was about a system that enabled him. The revelation sent shockwaves through the precinct. Rebecca's determination grew stronger, and she vowed to investigate further, no matter the cost. As Mia watched, a sense of justice flickered inside her. Her courage to stand up had sparked something bigger, a movement to uncover the truth. As the officer was driven away, his career in ruins, the crowd began to disperse, but the fight was far from over. Mia looked at her mother and Rebecca, knowing that this was just the beginning. The truth had come to light, but the journey toward real justice was only getting started.